Welcome to Sleepy Histories. Tonight, we'll journey into the quiet rhythms of the past, how grain was planted, gathered, and turned into bread, all without disturbing your rest. If you enjoy these stories, you can support the channel simply by subscribing. It helps us bring you more peaceful journeys like this one. And if you'd like, let us know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is there. It's always comforting to see our little nighttime community gathering across the world. Now, settle in. Let the past unfold gently. Take a deep breath, and let's begin.
A morning on the land. Before the rooster calls, long before sunlight filters through the wooden shutters of a farmhouse, the world of the grain farmer is already stirring. Imagine a village, not one you would find on any modern map. This one lies in the gentle cradle of a temperate valley, somewhere in southern Europe, or perhaps the Levant, or beyond. The air is cool, still touched with the dampness of night. A thin mist hugs the fields, and the distant trees are only shapes in the half-light. It is quiet, a kind of quiet that cradles thought and slows the heart. Here, cereal grains, wheat, barley, oats, millet, are not supermarket staples. They are lifeblood. They are the promise of porridge in the morning, loaves on the table, and seed for the year to come. Most people in this world are farmers, not by choice, but by necessity, and nearly all of them grow some kind of grain. The soil beneath their feet is both a blessing and a burden. It is not endlessly rich. Much of it must be coaxed, slowly and patiently, into offering its harvest. Fields are often narrow and irregular, shaped by the contours of hills, riverbanks, or long-forgotten claims. Some are dry and stony, others moist and loamy. All require care. In the quiet of the morning, a farmer walks to his plot. His footsteps are steady. He carries a wooden hoe across one shoulder, its shaft worn smooth by years of use. Around his ankles, dew gathers on simple leather boots, soft from wear and the morning's damp. Perhaps he hums something to himself, a tune his grandmother sang as she scattered seed, or one passed around at harvest festivals, sung slowly over mugs of warm ale. Much of the day's labor will be in maintenance, tending the soil, checking for signs of pest or disease, reinforcing a sagging fence. There is always something. Weeds push upward with tireless energy, their green shoots trying to claim space between the carefully sown rows. Birds swoop low, daring the scarecrow to stop them. The farmer notes it all with a quiet, practiced eye. He does not work alone. Nearby, other families share in the labor. A child helps guide a patient ox pulling a wooden plow. It carves gentle furrows into the earth, flipping dry soil to expose the cooler layer beneath. An older woman stoops to pull weeds by hand, her movements deliberate and slow, not rushed. Farming here is not about speed. It is about rhythm. The tools are simple but well made. Iron where it matters, wood where it can be shaped and repaired. The plough, the hoe, the sickle, all shaped by hands that knew how they should feel. Balanced, strong, but never sharp or dangerous. Nothing here is built to rush. Everything is built to last. Seed grain is precious. It has been chosen carefully. Not the fattest, not the most beautiful, but the grain that stores well, resists rot, and grows reliably in this particular patch of earth. To run out of seed is to gamble on hunger, so every scattering is done with intention. The rhythm of the sowing, a dip of the hand, a sweep of the arm, the light whisper of grain over earth, becomes almost a kind of meditation. In the distance, someone calls softly to another across the field. The voices carry, soft but clear, through the open air. The sun is beginning to rise now, gilding the tops of the trees with a pale gold. Shadows stretch long behind the farmers as they work, slowly and steadily, their outlines dancing between furrows. There is no romanticism in this life. It is hard, but there is dignity in its steadiness, in the way the seasons are met with care rather than fear, in how knowledge is passed down not through books, but through hands and habit and memory. There is also a strange kind of peace. The farmer knows this land, knows which patch holds moisture longer, which ridge catches the frost late in spring. These details, intimate and specific, shape every decision. By midday the work will pause. There will be bread, coarse, dark, dense, perhaps a smear of soft cheese or something pickled from the last harvest. Then a short rest in the shade, a few words exchanged, maybe even laughter. And then the work resumes. But not now. Now, in the calm hush of morning, the fields stretch out like a quiet sea, green and gold and brown. Birds flit between hedgerows. A breeze rustles through barley heads still green with youth. Somewhere nearby, water trickles, a shallow stream, diverted carefully by hand centuries ago to feed these very fields. It is in these small, steady moments that bread begins, not in a bakery, not even in a mill, but here, in the cool earth and the measured hands of those who tend it. Let the day unfold slowly, let the fields breathe, let the grain grow in the quiet, the rhythm of the seasons. The land does not rush. It moves by quiet rules, the slow turning of the earth, the warming and cooling of the air, the steady wheel of the seasons. And so, the farmer must listen. In this world, time is not measured by clocks or calendars. It is known by feel, by the softening of frost in the soil, by the scent of blossoms on the wind, by the hush that settles just before rain. These are the signs that guide the farmer's work. Spring is a time of hope and careful attention. The soil is turned again, if it hasn't already been in autumn, and the seed is cast into furrows that look much the same as those from centuries past. It's not always wheat. In some places barley thrives better. In others, oats or rye. And further east or south, millet or rice take their place. Each crop has its needs. Each demands its own rhythm. When the seeds are sown, there is a pause, a waiting. The farmers walk the fields daily, eyes scanning for green shoots. It is a quiet kind of anticipation. There is little to be done but watch and tend. The rains come, or they don't. The ground warms, or it doesn't. The crop begins to rise, or it struggles. And still the farmer waits. Summer brings its own labors. The plants grow tall, weeds grow faster. The sun can parch or nourish. Sometimes the wind helps. Sometimes it flattens whole fields. But always there is motion, slow, living motion in the waving stalks, in the insects that hum through the grain, in the workers moving row by row, pulling what does not belong. In hotter climates, the farming calendar may shift, planting in the cooler season, harvesting early. Where rice is grown, fields may be flooded, the surface shimmering like glass, pierced by bright green shoots. A different rhythm, but still a rhythm. Harvest is its own season, not simply a date, but a feeling. The grain is ready when the heads are heavy and bowed, when the stalks rustle dryly in the breeze. The color changes, deepens, from green to gold, or a pale silvery hue, depending on the crop. It is not rushed, but once it begins, the village moves in concert. Sickles are sharpened, baskets are repaired, ropes and sledges are checked. Everyone who can walk and carry takes part, from young children to the oldest hands. The fields are gathered in with care, each handful cut close to the base, bundled into sheaves, and tied with long grass or twine. The air is full of sounds, the whisper of straw, the rasp of metal on stem, the soft voices of neighbors working together. And at night, tired limbs and full hearts. A good harvest means full bellies through winter. A bad one means choices, which grain to eat and which to save for seed. Some farmers, in better years, leave part of their fields fallow. The earth is allowed to rest, to breathe. Sometimes beans or peas are planted there instead, crops that help the soil. Other times, the ground is simply left to its wildness, to recover. And then comes the threshing. It is a patient, repetitive task. The grain must be separated from its husk. In some villages, flails are used, two wooden rods joined by a cord, swung rhythmically to strike the bundled heads. In others, oxen or donkeys are walked slowly in circles over the harvest, trampling the stalks on a hard surface until the grain breaks free. Dust rises, chaff flies. The smell is dry and sweet. After threshing comes winnowing, another gentle art. The grain is tossed into the air, letting the breeze carry away the lighter husks. It's a sight to see. A person standing atop a flat stone or hillock, casting handfuls of grain skyward, watching the wind do its quiet work. The sound is like soft rain on dry leaves. Finally, the grain is clean, dry, and ready to store. It is measured not in pounds or kilograms, but in baskets, in sacks, in jars of known size. Some is ground quickly for meals. Some is stored away in clay pots or wooden bins. Some is tucked into corners of the house, or even buried in the floor for safekeeping. And with the grain secure, the season begins to wind down. The tools are cleaned and stacked. The fields are walked again, not in work, but in gratitude. The year's labor has shape now. It sits in storerooms, in cellars, in the bellies of those who made it. And soon the earth will rest again. The leaves will fall. The first frost will bite. And the cycle will begin once more, quiet and slow, as it always has. Let the seasons turn. Let the fields sleep. Let the grain wait gently in the dark. The hands that grow the grain. A field of wheat may seem like a single thing, a soft golden blanket spread across the land. But behind every stalk is a hand that planted it, a family that watched it grow, a life lived in quiet rhythm with the earth. In many places, farming is not an individual pursuit. It is a shared labor. A household, often large and multi-generational, works together across the seasons. Parents, children, grandparents, and hired help all contribute. Some tasks require strength, others patience, others a certain kind of attentiveness, born only of long experience. Early in the morning, as the mist still clings to the low places, the village begins to stir. A pot is set over the fire. The smell of yesterday's bread, warm and slightly sour, fills the room. Children shuffle in sleepily, rubbing their eyes, reaching for a crust or cup. It is not a rushed breakfast, but not a lingering one either. There is work to be done. The day is organized not by clock, but by task. Someone checks the grain stored in the corner bin, brushing aside a cloth lid to peer inside. Is it dry? Has any moisture crept in? Are there signs of mice? It must be watched carefully. Losses are quiet and cumulative. Others fetch water. Some go out to tend the fields. One might stay behind to grind flour for that day's dough. The handmill sits low to the ground, two heavy stones, one atop the other. The upper one turns slowly, grinding the grain beneath. A soft, sandy scraping sound, steady and rhythmic. Not unpleasant. Almost like the tide coming in over coarse sand. Flour gathers in a shallow bowl. It is never entirely fine. Bits of bran and chaff cling to it, but it is wholesome and filling. Enough for porridge, for flatbread, for dumplings, or cakes. The mill is tiring to use, so it's often turned by the youngest, or those less suited to outdoor labor. A child might take a turn at it, pushing with both hands, resting now and again. Stories may be told, songs softly sung, feet bare against the cool earth of the floor. Meanwhile, outside, tools are carried over shoulders. A small group walks to the edge of the field, stopping to greet a neighbor or admire a particularly fine sheaf of barley. No one is in a rush. The field does not move faster for being hurried. Along the way they may pass a plot of vegetables, onions, leeks, beans, or a small orchard. But grain is the core. It is what sustains. It is what fills the belly when all else is scarce. On large estates or manorial lands, the picture changes. Some farmers do not own their fields, but work them on behalf of a landlord, in exchange for protection, or a portion of the yield, or a rent in coin or kind. The relationship varies from place to place, and century to century. But always the grain moves upward, from soil to barn to granary to table. And in cities, or among traveling merchants, there are those who do not farm at all. They buy their grain in markets, but even then they are connected. The flour they need came from someone's field, someone's hand. The bread they eat carries the memory of another's labor. Throughout the day, tasks shift. Some weed the field edges, careful not to disturb the grain. Others patch a low wall of stones that keeps animals out. Someone repairs a fence post. A child chases off a group of birds with a shout and waving arms, laughing as the flock scatters. When the sun is high, there is rest. Perhaps under a tree or beside a stack of tools. Bread is broken and shared. Water passed around. Maybe a small piece of cheese or a boiled egg or some dried fruit. tucked away for the midday meal. Nothing extravagant, but it satisfies. And then the work resumes, a little slower in the heat. The air is thick with the scent of warm grain and sun on earth. Shadows grow long, the light becomes golden again, the color of ripe wheat. And when it is time to return home, the work does not end. It simply changes shape. The flour ground earlier is now dough, resting in a bowl beside the hearth. A bit of sour starter mixed in, a pinch of salt if available. The baker's hands, often the same hands that planted the seed, knead it gently, folding, pressing, turning. The motion is practiced, slow, almost thoughtful. Later it will be shaped into loaves or cakes, or flattened into discs for a griddle. But for now, it rests, as the family does, as the earth does, and overhead the stars begin to appear one by one. The day has been full, not with noise or rush, but with steady purpose, with the kind of work that leaves a body tired and a mind quiet. Let the hands rest now. Let the dough rise. Let the night settle softly over the fields, tools of the harvest. In the stillness of early morning, before the light fully reaches the fields, a farmer gathers their tools. These are not grand or complex things. They are simple, familiar, and worn smooth with use, shaped by hand, passed down through seasons, mended when broken, trusted like old friends. A wooden sickle handle, curved to fit the palm, with a blade of iron that catches the light. A basket woven from reeds or willow, wide and sturdy. A long-handled flail for threshing. Twine spun from plant fibers, tucked neatly into a pouch. Each has its place. Each plays its part. There is something quieting in the steadiness of tools like these. They do not change much over time. They are not hurried by invention or made obsolete by fashion. They are built to do one thing well, to serve the harvest, to honor the grain. As the sun rises, its light falling gently across the golden fields, the work begins. Sickle in hand, the harvester steps among the tall stalks. The motion is slow, almost meditative. Reach, grasp, cut. Reach, grasp, cut. The sound is soft, a whisper of blade through straw, the rustle of gathered stems, the brush of sandals or bare feet on dry soil. The grain is cut low, near the base of the stalk, and bundled into neat sheaves. Each bundle is tied with a twist of grass or a strip of bark. Then it is laid in rows to dry beneath the open sky. The work continues across the day, bent backs moving in harmony with the land. There is little talking, just the rhythm of labor, and the occasional call from one field to another, or a laugh when a bird startles from the stalks. Harvesting is not only hard work, it is a communal ritual. Whole villages may work together, field by field. In some places songs are sung, not loudly but low and steady to help the pace. In others silence is kept, and the only music is the rustling of grain and the creak of baskets. When the field has been cleared, the sheaves are carried or carted to a threshing floor. This may be a patch of packed earth, a smooth slab of stone, or a wooden platform, swept clean and prepared with care. The bundles are spread out, and the threshing begins. With flails, 2 rods joined by leather or rope, the farmers beat the grain gently but firmly. striking rhythmically to loosen the kernels from the chaff. The flails rise and fall in time, like a dance. The sound is steady, a soft percussion. Thump, rustle, thump, rustle. Sometimes animals are used instead, oxen or donkeys walking in slow circles, trampling the sheaves underfoot. Their hooves press and grind, freeing the grain with each step. Dust rises in small golden clouds, caught in the sunlight like pollen. Once the threshing is done, the winnowing begins. This is the work of air and balance. The grain is lifted in flat baskets or scoops and tossed gently into the breeze. The heavier kernels fall back down. The lighter husks, the chaff, are carried off by the wind. It is a graceful task, often done by women or elders. The movement is light, careful, almost ceremonial. Up, toss, fall, again and again. The air filled with drifting husk and faint dust, and the cleaned grain gathers below in a quiet heap. This grain is the prize, not gold or jewels, but food, life, and promise. It holds meals for winter, seed for spring, and gifts to share or trade. It is measured by weight, by volume, by feel in the hand. Smooth, firm, slightly warm from the sun. Sometimes it is poured into cloth sacks or wide jars. Other times into wooden bins built into the walls of the home, or clay pots sealed with wax or ash. Care is taken. Moisture is the enemy now. Mice and weevils, too. A good harvest must be guarded. The tools are set aside for cleaning. The flails hung on a hook, the baskets brushed out, the sickles wrapped in cloth. There is satisfaction in this, not celebration, not yet, but a quiet contentment, a task completed, a season honored. In some places there will be a small feast after the last sheaf is brought in. Nothing extravagant, just warm bread, a bit of beer or wine, perhaps a stew, laughter around a fire, the telling of stories, the retelling of harvests past, and the naming of those who remembered the rhythm before. And tomorrow, the tools will rest. The field will sleep. And the grain, nestled safely away, will wait for its next becoming, not in the field, but in the hearth. The mill and the flour. Before there can be bread, there must be flour, and before there is flour, there is the mill. Some grain is ground at home, with hand tools, simple circular stones, one atop the other, turned slowly with the strength of arms and shoulders. But for many, the mill lies elsewhere, by a stream, at the edge of the village, or perched on a hill where the wind runs strong and patient. The mill is a place of motion, but not of noise. Its sound is steady, even soothing. The turn of wooden gears, the slow groan of timbers shifting under their own age, the soft rush of water or wind driving the great wheel. Inside, the air smells of dust and grain, dry, a little sweet, and warm. The miller is a quiet figure, familiar to all. He tends the stones with care, adjusts the gap between them by feel, by sound. Too close, and the grain will burn. Too far, and it will remain whole. He listens, not with his ears alone, but with his hands, his eyes, his memory. Each sack of grain is poured slowly into the hopper, a wooden funnel that feeds the millstone. The top stone turns slowly, always in motion. Beneath it, the grain cracks and crumbles. It becomes meal, then fine flour, spilling out in a soft stream. No two flours are alike. Some are pale and powdery like dusting snow. Others are coarse and golden, speckled with bran and bits of husk. The difference lies in the grain, in the stones, in the season. There is no single, perfect flour. Only the flour that suits your bread, your hearth, your hand. In some places the mill is communal, a place where many farmers come, bringing sacks on carts or slung over shoulders. They wait their turn, they talk, they share news. Sometimes they sit on the low wall and watch the mill wheel turn, watching the water pass beneath in ribbons of light and motion. The mill may take a toll, a small portion of the flour kept as payment. This is expected. The mill must be maintained and the miller fed. Still, it is a quiet negotiation. The weight of a scoop, the memory of past years, the trust of hands. In other places, mills are owned by landlords or monasteries. The farmer has little choice but to come and to give what is asked. Still the flour comes, and with it the promise of bread. Some households, especially the poor, grind only enough for the day. They use a quern, small and slow. A child may take a turn, or a mother, or a grandparent. The motion is circular, repetitive. A soft scrape, scrape, scrape. Flour gathers in a ring at the base, warm from friction. It smells faintly nutty. It clings to the fingers. To grind a bowl of flour may take an hour. But there is no hurry. The dough will wait. The hearth is patient. The flour, once gathered, is sifted or not, depending on taste and need. A rougher flour makes a denser bread, but one that fills the belly well. Finer flour, when it can be spared, yields lighter loaves, softer crumb. In some households the two are blended. A bit of barley to stretch the wheat, a handful of millet to soften the rye. In warm climates, some flour is mixed not with water alone, but with milk, or honey, or olive oil. In colder ones, with beer, or leftover porridge. Every place has its own traditions, but all begin with flour, carried from the field, cleaned by hand, ground with care. As the day ends, the sacks are lifted and carried home. The mill grows quiet again. The wheel turns slower. The air grows cooler. A few stray grains lie along the path, left behind by a spilled basket or a hasty loading. Birds come to pick at them, hopping along the road. And in the hearths of the village, bowls are set out. Flour is measured by eye. Water is warmed just slightly. A pinch of salt, a bit of starter from the last loaf. A wooden spoon stirs. The dough begins. It is evening now. The mill sleeps, the flour waits, and the bread dreams of becoming. The making of bread. In a quiet kitchen, with stone walls and a packed earth floor, the bread begins to take shape. It does not begin with haste. It begins with flour, with water, with time, and with hands that have done this hundreds of times before. The flour is heaped into a wide wooden bowl. A well is made in the center. Into this, water is poured. Not cold, not hot, just warm enough to wake the dough. A pinch of salt is added, sometimes a trickle of oil, or a spoon of honey, if it can be spared. A bit of old dough, too, saved from yesterday's loaf, sour with wild yeasts. The spoon turns slowly, drawing flour into water, water into flour, until the mixture thickens. Then the hands begin. They press, fold, and stretch. The dough resists at first. It clings to fingers. But with patience, it begins to change. It becomes elastic, smooth, soft. The pressure of kneading is firm, but never rushed, like the tide working the shore. Outside, the day goes on. Animals are fed, tools are repaired, children run between the houses. But inside, the dough is left to rest. It is covered with a cloth and set near the hearth. The warmth encourages it. Over time, it rises, quietly, without fanfare. Bubbles form inside, lifting the mass. The smell deepens from plain flour to something rounder, richer, almost alive. Later, the dough is turned out and shaped. Some loaves are round, others long and narrow. In some homes, the dough is flattened into discs to be baked on stones or a griddle. In others, it is placed into clay forms, shaped like the hands that built them. Bakers often mark the top of the dough. A cross, a pattern of lines, a thumbprint. Sometimes for beauty, sometimes for tradition, sometimes just to let the steam escape. The oven is already warming. In small homes, it may be no more than a cavity beside the fire, lined with stone. In larger villages, there may be a communal oven, fired once a day and shared by all. Ashes are swept out with a wet rag or a bundle of herbs. The stone inside is hot enough to bake, but not to burn. The air smells faintly of smoke, of wood, of warm stone. The loaves are slid in carefully one by one. The door is shut, a slab of wood or stone pressed tight, and the waiting begins again. There is no timer, only instinct and smell and experience. The scent of baking bread is unmistakable, sweet, earthy, rich. It fills the home, drifts into the street, mingles with the dust and the wind and the low sun of evening. When the loaves emerge, they are golden or dark, depending on the flour. The crust is firm, but not hard. The base is tapped. A low, hollow sound means it is done. They are set on wooden boards or clean cloths to cool. Not long, just enough. Later they will be broken and shared. Perhaps dipped in broth, perhaps eaten plain. Sometimes, still warm, a piece is torn off for a child, who eats it slowly, eyes half closed, sitting in a patch of sunlight on the floor. In cities, the rhythm is faster. Bakers rise before dawn, mix dough in troughs, fire great ovens of stone and brick. Their bread is sold to those who cannot bake, to workers, travelers, monks, merchants. But even there, the steps are much the same. The ingredients humble, the process slow. Sometimes festivals bring sweetened loaves, spiced with cinnamon or filled with fruit. But most days the bread is plain, and that is enough. Each loaf holds the memory of its making, the field, the harvest, the mill, the hands, the fire. And now it waits on the table. Steam curls from a broken edge. A crust cracks faintly as it cools. And somewhere, beyond the window, the wind stirs the empty fields once more. Grain and trade. Not all bread is eaten by the ones who grow the grain. In towns and cities, on riversides and mountain roads, there are people who do not farm, who live by other trades, in places where fields are few or distant. And still, they eat bread. They too rise in the morning and reach for something warm, something filling, something made from flour. The grain must come to them, across distances, across boundaries, across seasons. And so it travels. Imagine a path, narrow and worn, the edges tufted with grass, shaped by the feet of traders and donkeys, by the creaking wheels of carts. Upon it, sacks of barley and wheat move from farm to market, market to town, town to city. Slowly, steadily. Nothing rushes. Everything moves in time. At a village market, a farmer stands beside a cloth sack half filled with grain. A scale sits nearby, a beam of wood balanced on a post, with stones for weight. Buyers come and go, pausing to feel the grain between their fingers, to smell it, to ask questions softly. Not all grain is equal. Some is plump and dry, some shriveled or damp. A good buyer knows the difference. Sometimes the grain is sold as is. Sometimes it is taken a few steps further, ground into flour, shaped into loaves, and sold in simple stalls. In a small town, the baker may also be the miller, or the seller, or the one who raised the grain. The roles blur. In larger places, specializations emerge. Grain merchants rent stalls in the market square. Millers operate full-time. Bakers work long before dawn, their ovens glowing orange in the dark. And those who buy may never think of fields at all. The bread is simply there, still warm, still fragrant, waiting. The coin exchanged may be silver, or copper, or barter, a length of wool, a clay jug, a basket of dried fish. Prices change with the seasons. After a poor harvest, bread grows smaller, coarser, more precious. After a good one, even the poor may buy 2 loaves instead of 1. Sometimes taxes are collected not in coin, but in grain, stored in vast granaries under watchful eyes. These stocks feed soldiers, support rulers, or fill storehouses in case of famine. Grain becomes power, not just food, but wealth. In port cities, ships are loaded with sacks of wheat from inland farms. In mountain passes, pack animals wind their way toward monasteries or manors, carrying millet or rye. And in distant lands, rice moves through similar paths, from flooded field to drying yard, from merchant to cook. A different grain, but the same gentle journey. Back in the village after market day, the farmer returns home. The empty sack slung over one shoulder, a few coins tucked into a pouch, maybe a new knife or a bolt of cloth, or a jar of salt in hand. Goods traded for the grain that began in a furrow months before. Bread is no longer just sustenance. It has moved. It has changed hands. It carries stories with it now, of buyers and sellers, of needs met and mouths fed. Even in cities, where walls are high and streets narrow, the fields are never far. They linger in every loaf, in every crumb swept from a table, in every warm breath that rises from a crust just broken. Grain may travel, bread may be sold, but the earth remembers. Bread at the table. The day ends, as it often does, with bread. In a small home with smoke-darkened rafters, the table is laid simply. A clay cup of water, a wooden bowl of lentils or stew, and at the center, resting on a folded cloth, a round loaf of bread, still faintly warm, its crust cracked in places, its scent familiar and steady. A knife may be used, or the bread may be broken by hand. There is no ceremony, but there is attention. The loaf is passed around, a piece for each person. Nothing too large, nothing wasted. Crumbs are caught in waiting hands. Around the table there is quiet talk, of fences mended or goats wandered, or a child's small mischief, of weather always, of when the next planting must begin, of who has extra flour to share. The bread absorbs the broth, it softens in the mouth, it fills the belly without fanfare. It is not exotic, not new, but it is enough. In colder seasons, the bread may be stale, toasted on the hearth, soaked in milk or wine, softened into pottage. It still nourishes. Even dry, it carries the memory of harvest and hearth. In wealthier homes, bread may come white and fine, sifted nearly to dust. It may be cut in careful slices, served on platters. In others, it is flat and wide, used as plate and food alike. In still others, it is baked in ash, eaten with fingers, dipped in oil. The shapes vary, but the presence remains. Bread is there. For the sick, bread soaked in broth. For the young, bread with honey. For the traveller, bread wrapped in cloth and carried in a pack. For the morning, bread offered quietly with a lowered gaze. And for the gods, in many places, a portion of bread is left. On an altar, on a windowsill, at the foot of a tree. A gesture, simple and old, asking for blessing in return. Bread connects the living to the land, to each other, to the ones who came before. It is memory, folded and baked. The fields sleep now, the oven is cool, the hands that sewed and kneaded and carried are at rest, and the loaf is eaten, not all at once, not loudly, but piece by piece in good company, with soft words and slow hearts. And when the table is cleared, and the light is low, and the last ember has flickered to dark, only the scent remains, faint and familiar, like home, like rest, like something still warm just beneath the surface. Somewhere far from here, the fields are quiet. The tools are hung, the flour rests in jars, the ovens are cool, and in the stillness of evening, long after the last loaf has been broken and shared, the story of bread continues, not with noise, not with haste, but with memory and care and time. In every field that turned green in spring, in every hand that scattered seed, in every flake of bran and curl of steam, there is a rhythm, old and slow, that never fully stops. It only pauses and waits, like the earth beneath your feet, like the breath between dreams, like the gentle hush that comes before sleep.